What's going on, guys? I'm Jay from Block Info, and he's Paul. So what do you think will happen if we add smart contract functionality to Bitcoin? Well, Diego, the CEO of Rsk, will help you with that question. Thank you for coming and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well,
I'm very happy.
Can you introduce yourself and your team briefly to the viewers?
Yes. My name is Diego Gutierrez Aldivar. I'm the CEO of Rsk. I'm also the president of the Latin American Bitcoin NGO. I used to be the president of the Argentinian Bitcoin NGO as well. So I've been working in the Bitcoin space for 6 years now. Creating grassroots movements in all Latin America, and for the last 3 years in Rsk, bringing smart contracts into Bitcoin. Rsk team, the founders is a 5 members team where we have Sergio Lerner, our chief scientist and the brains behind Rsk, who is a very well-known cryptographer in the Bitcoin space. He was a security part of the Bitcoin core team. In the security aspects, he found 9 vulnerabilities in Bitcoin. So he has been contributing to knowledge and new techniques in the cryptocurrencies space for many years, since 2011. And the other founders had a long trajectory building software in the financial side. So that creates a team that has a unique vision, because we see not only the technological aspects, but also the social aspects, the financial aspects. So we are trying to put this technology to the service of society.
Mm-hmm. So what's Rsk in 1 or 2 sentences, briefly?
Well, Rsk is trying to create a vision, to make a vision reality, that is the construction of the Internet of Value. We think that in the last 25 years, we have seen how the Internet of Information changed our society. And with the birth of Bitcoin, we had the first building block to create a new Internet for the transfer of value. So in that vision, the first step we took was bringing smart contracts into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is very good to store value, to transfer value. But when you want to have decentralized business logic, Bitcoin is very limited. So by bringing smart contracts into Bitcoin, we are improving, extending Bitcoin capabilities to process more complex business logic and decisions. But we will start working now, and we have been working in the design and conception of the following blocks that will complete this Internet of Value, where we'll need storage of data, we need directory services, so it's easier to transfer value, so you can send money to Dieguito instead of a long string of letters and numbers, scaling solutions like off-chain payments, data feeds, so we can get information from the real world into the blockchain, into the decentralized networks, so smart contracts can make decisions based on that information from the real world. And finally, a P2P secure communications protocol where we can exchange private information only among the participants and use the blockchain to certify the agreements, but not to save all the sensitive data.
Then what would be the main improvements of Bitcoin made possible by Rsk?
By Rsk.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is we have faster confirmation times. So in average now a transaction is being validated every 15 seconds. We can lower that, and we, as more miners join the network, we will lower that. So the average transaction time will go down to 5-7 seconds. Also by having more scaling, we can process 100 transactions per second now. That's 20 times what Bitcoin can process. And that has an economical implication, because when you process more transactions with the same infrastructure, transactional cost goes down. So you can have, in Rsk today, a transaction cost 3.5 cents USD. So compare that to Bitcoin, it's almost 10 times less, and the same with Ethereum. So we are working on scaling, but at the same time on lowering transactional costs, so we can use these tools to create an inclusive financial system for the world. And of course, the other thing I didn't mention that is very important is you can have more complex business logic attached to Bitcoin. So you can do, for example, escrow accounts where you leave smart Bitcoins locked until a transaction is fulfilled, until the parties involved agree that the transaction. So if you provide me a service, I can leave the payment in custody in a smart contract, the smart Bitcoins in custody, and when the service is finished, I approve that the services were rendered properly, and the smart Bitcoins will go to you directly.
Okay, so in Japan conference, you said with RSK, Bitcoin can have like 20,000 to 30,000 transactions per second?
Yes, that's with adding the layer 3, which is called Lumino, that is off-chain processing. And that is, in RSK, we are also working on extending the on-chain scaling. Our chief scientist created Lumino compression protocol, where we can almost double the amount of transactions on-chain without creating more bloat on the blockchain, because scaling is not only about the technology, but also about the economical aspects. If you grow, for example, a blockchain to process 400 transactions per second, then that blockchain will grow at 1 terabyte per year. So who is going to store 1 additional terabyte of information per year? So you need to create incentive models, economic incentive models, for the full nodes to store that data. So we are also working on that. We created designed a system called proof of unique blockchain storage, where full nodes can prove they are storing the blockchain and get paid for that, but also solving the economical problems and incentivizing full nodes to store all that data. So if you combine that, all the on-chain improvements, with the off-chain layer like Lumino, you can scale that on-chain layer maybe 10, 15 times, and then you are reaching 20,000, 30,000 transactions per second. Also, because the blockchain has a particularity that is very interesting, that is, once you open an account, you don't have to pay maintenance fee. So for the people who is the poorest people in the world, they suddenly can have an account, they can have access to financial services, very cheap transactional costs, and only pay when they use the system. They don't need to pay recurrent fees or maintenance fees.
So just going back to the basics, can you explain a two-way peg, the Bitcoin blockchain? Yes.
The two-way peg is basically a way to connect two assets between two blockchains. So in this case, what we are doing is connecting one Bitcoin to a smart Bitcoin. So that's the way we keep the relationship between the two assets one-on-one. So every time you send a Bitcoin to a special address in the Bitcoin network, that is an RSK address, the RSK network understands that transaction and creates a smart Bitcoin on the RSK network. So suddenly you obtain that smart Bitcoin, you can use it to pay for smart contract execution or anything else, and miners get paid for the smart contract execution with smart Bitcoins. And at any time, there is a special address on the RSK network that is a redeem address where you can send the smart Bitcoins and get the original Bitcoin back. So that's the concept of a two-way peg. And it has some challenges because in order for that to be fully automated and not depending on third parties, you need both blockchains to understand each other. So, and given that Bitcoin has a restricted programming language and the scripting language is limited, it's not possible for Bitcoin to understand transactions that happen on RSK. On the other way, it's possible for RSK to understand what is going on the Bitcoin blockchain. So that process of creating smart Bitcoins is automated. It's fully automated and decentralized. But when you go back from smart Bitcoins to Bitcoins, when you go back from RSK to Bitcoin, we had to create a special system, that is what we call the federation, to have like trusted parties or a group of trusted parties that would release the funds on the Bitcoin network. That's temporary. In our roadmap, we have the idea of implementing drive chain, that it's an idea that Paul Stores from Truthcoin created, and we have been collaborating in shaping the idea. If drive chain is implemented, it's an opcode that can be implemented as a soft fork in Bitcoin. If we have drive chain, then we can have a way back that is also fully decentralized and not centralized. So So it's a process. We use the federation because it was what we could do now. You know?
Yeah, so for the federation, you said it's a temporary solution until drive chain is implemented.
It's temporary for the peg, but the federation is part of our design, of our architecture. So the federation will remain and will provide very useful services. Because the idea is that the federation will provide oracling services, what I was mentioning, data feeds, information. I mean, when you want to make decisions, for example, an insurance policy. Let's say it's an insurance policy for flight cancellation. The smart contract can only make decisions based on information that lives on the blockchain. So somebody has to tell the smart contract that the flight got canceled so the insurance policy can pay for it. So the idea is that if small companies don't have the resources to set up their own oracling services, so the idea is that the federation will provide oracling services out of the box, so anybody can easily deploy solutions and use the oracling services.
And what companies are currently part of the federation?
Well, the federation is comprised of 25 of the top wallets and exchanges in the world. I don't want to mention particular ones because then I always forget one. but basically it's all top exchanges and wallets in the world. And why we choose them is because they already have secure environments to run their servers, because they manage third parties' money and assets. So they already have a secure environment to run their servers. So it's easier to deploy or to have the levels of security that we require for the federation.
Okay, and I also remember seeing in the white paper that universities, non-profit organizations can be part of the federation as well? Yes.
In our long-term vision of the federation, we think federation will fulfill a role to also do attestation or certify interactions that organizations or group of organizations want to have more control of. So that's why I was saying that the federation is the first federation, but the idea is to have maybe a federation of federations in the future. So let's say a group of banks wants to create a joint financial system, but they want to have an additional certification from their servers. They don't want to rely completely on the open network. So they have the best of both worlds. The traditional world, certain level of control, so they will set up their own federation and they can have the final approval of the transactions involved in that network.
And just for regular users, so how can the users be assured that the federation will act trustfully, ethically?
Well, there's never full assurance of that the third parties, even in Bitcoin, there's a certain level of trust. Yeah. That's why Nick Szabo always talk about trust minimization. So it's not about, there's never full certainty. So what we did is the federation has you need a level of trust that is higher than a proof of work network, a decentralized proof of work network, but you can achieve certain level of trust minimization, basically because the federation members have hardware keys that are signing transactions automatically. So as long as 2/3 of the members stay honest, the federation will stay honest. So somebody that wants to compromise the federation needs to compromise 2/3 of the federation members, which is hacking at least 7-8 very high secure environments at once. So it's not that easy, and even if that happens, there are some security safety systems, so you can put the peg to stall. Let's remember that the federation only impacts the peg, so the one-on-one relationship between Bitcoin and smart Bitcoins. Everything else on the Rsk network is secured by the Bitcoin miners. So these security concerns only apply to the release of the Bitcoin funds into the Bitcoin network. So if you have tokens issued in the Rsk network, they are not being secured by the federation, they are being secured by the Bitcoin network.
Can you explain the difference between Rsk with Ethereum and then RSK with other chains such as ADA, Quantum, EOS?
Yes, RSK, mostly the difference is security models, because at the end, especially with Ethereum, where we share the same programming language, and we have also the same interfaces. So any Ethereum application can be ported to RSK and will run without any modification, because the Web3 RPC interfaces are the same, are fully compatible. The Solidity programming language is fully compatible. In the future, we plan to have additional runtime environments where you can run with other programming languages that are more secure than Solidity, but you will always have a runtime environment that will be fully compatible with Ethereum. So from the functionality perspective, they are exactly the same. They offer the same functionalities. But when you go to the consensus protocol, to the security of the network, is when you have the differences. Because Ethereum has its own infrastructure, its own hashing power and hashing algorithm, and we are basically secured by Bitcoin miners using the Bitcoin hashing power and algorithms. So it's smart contracts secured by the Bitcoin network is the concept of RSK. When you talk about other models like ADA or EOS, then you're moving into proof of stake or different security models. And in our point of view, proof of work is the only one that has been, battle tested with hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars at stake. So we think that proof of stake is still in a maturity, is maturing. So we need to see, what are the levels of securities that proof of stake or delegated proof of stake can offer, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it's in an experimental phase. And as we want to enable a financial inclusion system for the world or run like production applications, security is key for us in this stage. But we want to see the other security models evolve and thrive, because that's good for humanity in general, no?
Just regarding the mining and the block creation, can you explain more about the D-Core Plus and the Ghost protocol?
Yes. And to understand the benefits of those two, you need to understand how the Satoshi consensus protocol works, because the first consensus protocol was Satoshi's consensus protocol, which has maybe it's part of the design, but it has one problem, that is you have orphan blocks. So if a second miner gets to the solution of a block at the same time than a first miner, then all the work that miner did is wasted, so they don't get paid. And that's not a problem in Bitcoin, because validation is every 10 minutes. But when you shorten the validation time, orphan blocks happen more and more often. And if you want to have like a few second validation times, there's no other way than creating incentive models for orphan blocks, because otherwise miners would be wasting more energy than they are contributing to the chain. So that's why Ghost was the first protocol to provide a solution to that. And how they did that is like saying, okay, if you come second, I will still attach your block to the son of the block you were competing with. That's why they are called uncles, because basically, uncles are blocks that were competing with the father that was actually being included in the blockchain, and they are attached to the children of that father block, but they also get an incentive. And there's a proportion on how much is distributed among the uncles and how much is distributed about the children. So that, in a way, solves the problem of having shorter validation times and keeping miners incentivized. But still doesn't solve in full the problem of what is called selfish mining. That is, as a miner, if I found a block, I have certain incentive to keep the information for me and start mining the following block on top of my block, so I can get more profits because I don't share the information with the rest. And in Bitcoin, that selfish mining can be achieved with 30% of the network. In Ethereum, Sergio found that maybe with 16%, but Vitalik said that in practical scenarios maybe it's also 30%. So we went one step further with D-Core Plus, and we created income smoothing. So there's like a pool of resources. So each block contributes to that pool. So when you get paid for a block, whether you are an orphan or the primary miner, you will get resources, or you will get incentive from previous block and contribute to following blocks. So in that way, there is no point of being selfish, because what you want is to evenly contribute hashing power and resources, because steady contribution is the best way to earn more.
So can you explain the RSK governance and also the voting structure?
Yes, in RSK now we are in what we call God mode, because we are in control of how the platform evolves. But we have in our plans the design of a system where new proposals will be voted by the community. In terms of implementation, we think that the Bitcoin way, that is basically full nodes decide and miners decide what to implement, is still the best way. It's a little bit, I would say, promotes the status quo. So it's a little bit like conservative in the way of updating the platform, but I think it's a good way. What we think we can improve is that we will create mechanisms so there's more visibility on the status of the network. One of the problems that Bitcoin has is that you don't know if the economic actors, the exchanges, the wallets, the people doing business in the network is ready or willing to update, to do an upgrade. So that's why hard forks are so difficult in Bitcoin. So one thing we are doing is we are implementing systems so the economic actors can notify their willingness or readiness to implement upgrades, so we can create better visibility in the face of a hard fork or a soft fork, even a soft fork. So we want to experiment with those systems. And as I said, also create a better incentive model and governance for the upgrades propositions, and to fund the development of new features in RSK once it leaves our hands. So we plan to get out of God mode, in some moment of the late 2018 or during 2019, and then we will see those governance systems in place and see how they work.
So what's the current hash rate for RSK?
Well, RSK is currently being secured by 10% of the Bitcoin network, but we already have done the work of setting up the pools that represent 85% of the Bitcoin network. So from a technical perspective, everything is ready to have 85% of the Bitcoin network. But of course, miners, they need an incentive to move forward and put the actual hashing power. So 10% already did, and we are working with the rest. So we expect during this year to achieve the 51% of the network. That's the current situation. That's around 3 exahash. Yes, it's a lot of hashing power.
So all of those RSK smart layers, are they only limited to Bitcoins or just other cryptocurrency too?
Well, for now, it's limited to smart Bitcoins, but also you can issue tokens. So you can create any representation of an asset. And in Argentina, for example, we are working with the Latin American Development Bank from the NGO to do a digital peso, a representation of the local currency. Because that's key to enable financial inclusion, because you need low volatility assets to do an inclusive financial system. So, it's not limited only to smart Bitcoins. Mm-hmm. In the future, we are talking with the Litecoin dev team and with the Bitcoin Cash dev team. So very likely in the future, we will have pegs with other crypto economies, and we will provide them smart contract capabilities to those crypto economies.
And one last question from me. So RSK you're not creating any coins because it's pegged 1-to-1. So are you guys having an ICO?
Well, we are not doing any public. So far, everything RSK did was based on private, VC funding. We are not doing a public sale. We do have a project to create a token to consume the infrastructure services on top. But we think there are better ways to engage with the community and help the community than doing a fundraising. So very likely when the token is created, we will distribute it to those that create communities that help create real use cases. So our idea is that the token is used for real use cases that will help society more than for speculative purposes.
Okay, so basically anyone that's claiming RSK is having an ICO, it's false.
Yes, no public sale, yes. And then we don't have any authorized representative anywhere. So that's because that's a problem. Yes, there are many websites like fake websites, fundraising for us without our authorization. But yeah.
Okay. Do you have any final comments for the viewers?
No, I think it's. I would say the final comment is that if you are seeing this, of course, it's because you are interested in this. But I always say technology is a tool for transformation, for social transformation. So get to know this technology well, get to know all the technologies around in decentralized technologies, and think how you can use these tools to improve society, to make a better society. Because this is what we are working in, like creating a better society with these technologies.
Okay. Well, that was a long answer for the interesting questions. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you all soon again. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Anyway, bye.